Hi everyone, and thank you so much for watching my channel, The Witty Turtle. And in today's video, we are going to revise the most important section of Pgbp, that is your section 3580, which speaks about specified businesses. Right? So let me tell you this in a very brief manner that this section allows 100% deduction in respect of capital expenditure in the year in which the expenditure was incurred. Okay, and if it was incurred before the commencement of the business, then in the year of commencement of the business 100% deduction will be allowed for the capex, right? So before starting the revision, first we need to understand why this section came into force, right? So before 2009, India was going through a very huge crisis where food inflation was nearly up to 20%, and people were facing a lot of difficulty in getting proper food, right? So in that year, what happened? In the from the year 2009 budget, government came with some tax incentive which will be provided to 14 businesses. 14 businesses, where this section is allowed. So this section basically deals with 14 businesses from right from 2009 up to 2017. Phase by phase, in every budget, two, three, or maybe four businesses came into joined the list, right? So without any further delay, let's start with the section. So now only we learned that before 2009, India was facing a crisis where it was very hard to get food for the people, for the not so well off people, right? So in that situation, to tackle this particular difficult situation, Indian government came with some tax incentives, and Section 3580 is one of those incentives, right? So generally, what happens when the government has to push certain businesses, then the government starts providing some kind of tax benefits to those businesses. So in the year 2009, for the first time, Section 3580 came into existence, right? And in that particular year, only three businesses were there in the list, for which capital expenditure will be allowed as a deduction for 100%, and it will be allowed in the year in which it was incurred, right? So in 2009's budget, the three things which came into the list, the first was cold chain facility for agro produce, for meat produce, and for fish produce. Okay, किन तीन चीजों के लिए लाया गया पहले? Agro, meat, and fish produce, because there was a lot of food crisis. So the first thing was that whichever company will establish cold chain facility so that the food crisis can be tackled, right, can be tackled. So for those businesses, so if any company will like establish the cold chain facility, then obviously it will enhance the mobility of food. लद्दाख में सपोज खाना नहीं पहुंच पा रहा था, तो अब वो खाना पहुंच पाएगा, एंड obviously the wastage of food can be reduced up to a very high number, right? So similarly, to solve similar problems, all the remaining 13 businesses also came into the list. So what is the first thing? The first business was cold chain facility for agro produce, fish produce, and meat produce, right? Now in the year 2009 only, the second business which came into force was your warehousing business for agro produce. So see, I told you in the beginning that food inflation was nearly around 20% in before 2019 2009, right? So to deal with that situation, many revolution came in the food industry only. So this is again what came into the picture: warehousing of the agro produce. जो भी एग्रो प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है, हाउ टू स्टोर देम प्रॉपरली फॉर अ लॉन्गर पीरियड, दैट वाज द मेन इशू, right? Now coming to the third business, the third business was pipeline setup, for setting up and operating of the pipelines for पेट्रोलियम एंड नेचुरल गैसेस, राइट? पेट्रोलियम एंड नेचुरल गैसेस, आज तो खैर ये बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गया है, बट अर्लियर बहुत ज़्यादा तो खैर अभी भी नहीं बढ़ा है, बट yes, now it has a good number, but earlier it was not there. So again, government came up with this particular business in the list. right? So what are the three businesses? The first one is your cold chain facility for agro produce, fish produce, and meat produce. The second point says that warehousing facility for agro produce, and the next is what? Petroleum and natural gas pipeline. जो लोग भी पाइपलाइन बिछाने का बिजनेस करेंगे, उनको उनको कैपेक्स पे 100% डिडक्शन मिल जाएगा उसी साल में, राइट? नाउ कमिंग टू द नेक्स्ट ईयर, in the budget of 2010, uh, before presenting the budget of 2010, so at that time government noticed that India is lagging behind, or India has a shortage of hotels having at least 2 stars or above. 2 stars, 3 stars, 5 stars, 7 stars hotels की कमी थी, right? So to overcome that, again, in the budget of 2010, one more business was introduced, which was hotel of 2 star and above, setting up or establishing hotels, right? Now the next thing that government noticed was the shortage of good hospitals, the shortage of hospitals having at least 100 beds, because the population was gradually increasing and there was not much hospital services to cater to that increasing population, right? So whichever SSE, whichever company will build and operate hospitals having at least 100 beds will get a deduction of 100% of capex, right? Now, during that time, what happened? There was a huge problem of slum areas, right? For example, Dharavi in Mumbai. So, similarly, for all those slum people, uh, another scheme came into the picture, which was housing project under slum redevelopment scheme. Slum redevelopment scheme में whoever will come and build housing units and provide it to the slum people, उन लोगों को वहाँ पे क्या मिलेगा? 100% कैपेक्स का डिडक्शन मिल जाएगा. Those SSCs will get a deduction of 100% on their capex, right? Whichever SSC will do the will build housing units under slum redevelopment scheme, they will get a deduction of 100%. So till now, 2009 and 2010, including both the years, we studied total 6 businesses, which is the first one, cold chain. Next is warehousing of agro produce. Next is what? Petroleum and your natural gas pipeline. The fourth one is what? The fourth one is hotel of 2 stars and above. The fifth one is hospitals having at least 100 beds. And the sixth one is your housing project under your slum redevelopment scheme, right? Now coming to the budget of 2011, but in 2011's budget, there were only 2 items. Okay, the first is housing project under affordable housing scheme. Don't get confused between the slum redevelopment scheme and affordable housing scheme. So in this particular business, housing units were being provided at an affordable price, right? So that everybody can have their own houses. So that was the first thing which was introduced in 2011's budget. And coming to the second entry, the second item was production of fertilizers in India. We know that India is a country of farmers. India is a country of agriculture. So obviously, manufacturing of the fertilizers in India is very necessary. And before that, nobody was interested to do that. So government felt a very huge demand of fertilizers in India, of producing fertilizers in India. So again, this particular thing was introduced. So by now we studied 8 things, the previous 6 things, and now 2 things. The first one is what? The first one is your housing project under affordable housing scheme, and the second is production of fertilizers in India. Now coming to the budget of 2012, where again 3 items were introduced. The first one is your beekeeping and production of bee honey and beeswax. So before that, nobody was much interested in the business of beekeeping, because the demand for beeswax and honey was not was there. Obviously it was there, but nobody was doing it in an organized manner. There were many players in the unorganized sector, but in the organized sector there wasn't many people. So to develop this particular business, again government included this uh, beekeeping business in the under your specified business, right? Now coming to the second thing, which was your which came in your 2012 budget, that is your setting up of container depot or container freight station. So now coming to what do you mean by container depot or your container freight station. So ये क्या होता है? What do you mean by container? So generally what happens while transporting products through your cargo or ship, generally those products are kept in huge containers, right? And you must have seen these things in movies. वो बहुत बड़ा बड़ा होता है and मतलब that might be like the size of my room. So like that, those are known as your containers, right? Generally Adani deals with all these containers. So setting up and operating the container depot or container freight station. So if you are engaged in this particular business, then again you'll get you are eligible for 35 AD. You can claim 35 AD. The next item is warehouse for sugar, chini, right? So whichever SSC will build and operate the warehouse for sugar, so all those SSCs are also eligible for your deduction under section 3580. So by now, how many things we have studied? Total 11, right? So what are the first six? The first three are cold chain facility, warehousing for agro produce, petroleum and natural gas, then your 2 star and above hotels, 100 plus bed hospital. The next thing is your housing project under slum redevelopment scheme. The next is housing project under affordable housing scheme. The next is your fertilizer, manufacturing of fertilizer in India. The ninth one is your beekeeping for production of bee honey and beeswax. Okay, bee honey and beeswax. And after that, this is your Adani wala thing, that is your setting up of container depot and container freight station. And lastly, it is your warehouse for sugar, right? So we, out of 14, we already studied 11. Now coming to the 2013 budget, it's a good news, there was no item added in the budget of 2013. And after that, in the year 2014, the budget came up with again two more items. What was the first item? Slurry pipeline for the transportation of iron ore. So we know that iron ores are naturally found. So to transport those iron ores, slurry pipelines are needed. Right. So India is a country of mines, right? There is a lot of mining work going on in India. So obviously, to transport the iron ore, we need a proper conveyance system. So for to develop and to promote that business, again this thing was introduced in the budget of 2014, which is your slurry pipeline for the transportation of iron ore. Now the next was this word you must be hearing everywhere now, which is your semiconductor, right? Setting up of a semiconductor wafer fabrication manufacturing unit. Semiconductor wafer fabrication manufacturing unit. If you are setting up and operating this particular thing, semiconductor wafer fabrication manufacturing unit, then again the SSC or the company engaged in this business is eligible for your deduction under section 3580, right? And after that, in the year 2017 budget, right after 2014, there was no addition in 2015 and 16. Directly in the year 2017's budget, again another thing came, which is your new infrastructure facility. If any SSC will be engaged in new infrastructure facility, for example your building of roads, sorry, construction of roads and और क्या था उसमें any kind of bridge or railway system or highway project, then uh, those businesses will be eligible for section 3580 deduction, right? So in the next class we will study everything in detail and we will again continue with this particular section, right? So before ending this video, let's do a quick revision. What are the total 14 businesses? First one is your it was introduced in 2009. See, you don't need to remember the year in which it came, but it gets easier for you if you remember it by this. Okay? So in the year 2009, which thing came? The first item that came was your cold chain facility for fish produce, meat produce and agro produce. Then the next thing which came was your warehousing business for your agro produce, then pipeline for petroleum and natural gases. Then in the year 2010, what came? uh, Hotels of 2 stars and above, then hospitals with at least 100 beds, and then housing project under slum redevelopment scheme, right? Then in the year 2011, again two things came. The first is your housing project under your affordable housing scheme, then your production of fertilizer in India. Then in 2012, the first thing that came was beekeeping business, and production of beeswax and bee honey, right? And after that, Adani came. Like the next thing is related to Adani, which is your setting up of container depot and container freight station, right? And the last one is your warehouse for sugar, right? After that, in 2013, nothing came, and in 2014 again, two things were there, which is your slurry pipeline for transportation of iron ore, and setting up of semiconductor wafer fabrication manufacturing unit, right? In 2014's budget, what are the two things which came into picture? The first is establishing slurry pipeline for transporting the iron ores. Okay, iron ores को transport करने के लिए slurry pipelines बिछाना, right? And then what came after that? Setting up of semiconductor wafer fabrication manufacturing unit. Semiconductor wafer fabrication manufacturing unit, right? And after that, in the year 2017's budget, again another thing came, which is your new infrastructure facility, right? New infrastructure facility. So these, okay, so as of now there are only 14 these 14 businesses. There might be some more additions in future. Okay, so in the next class, the first thing that we will understand is what are the things that come under your new infrastructure facility, and how is this section is applied in real life. That we will understand in the next class. I really hope this video has been a useful one for you, and if you find this video helpful, then please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, the Witty Turtle, and yes, don't forget to hit the bell icon so that tomorrow you'll be notified when I'll upload a new video on specified business. And yes, don't forget to share this video with your CA final and CM final friends.